What's coming across that border today are gangbangers, drug smugglers, human smugglers, child molesters, bad guys.
All right, that Russell Pierce here speaking about the law on the books. And so Russell Pierce, some of those closest to him actually have an active role in the Romney campaign. Now, we're going to bring in the calls in 1 second. Politically, though, let's not kid ourselves. Not too many months from now, in November, we're going to have an election. And just to give you a quick snapshot about where the Latino vote is right now, take a look here, because the margin is pretty wide. You got a 40-point spread between Obama and Romney, and a lot of people point to that spread being as wide as it is, Michael, after what we saw in the primary process, where things like the DREAM Act were brought up, deportation, et cetera, et cetera. And moreover, you have, forget about Democrats saying, who cares, but you got Alberto Gonzales, former Attorney General under the President. He said the Republicans got to be pretty careful about that. I'll read this quote here directly, saying, quote, "The way Republicans have talked about immigration has been harmful to the party. The dialogue has been mean, and we find our party facing an uphill battle because of the way that we talk about this issue." Now, Rubio is trying to come up with the Republican version of the DREAM Act, et cetera. Do they have a problem that Latinos, depending on where you're in the country, they'll vote Republican in certain elections? Are you turning off a big electorate here over this issue?
Well, when you have liberal Democrats constantly yelling, the sky is falling, and eventually for a period of time, people start believing the sky is falling.
I didn't believe Nard here when I said Alberto Gonzales, though.
Well, he's not exactly a movement conservative Republican either. The real issue here, what Hispanics are going to really zone in on, and I believe those numbers are going to change very rapidly as we go down through this campaign, is the economy and jobs. Hispanics, like everyone else in this country, they want their families to have an opportunity to reach the heights of the American dream. And
you might be right, but Dominic, you look at the map.
Clearly, Obama's administration has failed to do that.
States that the Democrats never have a fighting chance at now are considered in play for Obama because of this.
And that's the proof for all the talking points that Mike may argue and the right may argue. That's to prove how bad of a job the GOP has done on the issue of immigration, the DREAM Act, and Latinos. What's happening, they are making their own opinions, the Latino community, and they are greatly offended. And then when you couple in the fact that President Obama put Sonia Sotomayor on the Supreme Court, those are numbers that Romney is never going to be able to close.
You're not giving Mike enough credit. When Richard asked him a direct question where he had a political problem, he didn't answer it. He changed the subject.
Well,
now that
we have 7 months to go. I admit to the poll numbers. I don't deny the polls.
But you're blaming on liberal Democrats.
Well, because in fact, if you, like I said,
if you keep the Latino community is smart enough to make up its own mind,
you keep yelling the sky is falling to the Hispanics. Eventually, the Hispanics believe the sky is falling.
They're not smart enough to figure it out.
Once they start hearing all the issues in the campaign, jobs, the economy, the future of the nation, that's going to change.
Okay. Let me point out politically, this is also something of a dog whistle issue for conservatives and Republicans, for people who think that the border is too porous and think we haven't been tough enough on illegal immigrants. This is probably scoring just as many points, solidifying that base as it might be turning down Latino voters.
Let me bring in some of the callers because people have been waiting patiently on the lines. Let's start off with Kit, who's calling us from Hartsdale. And Kit, we start off asking about the law right now in Arizona. The Supreme Court's deciding if it's constitutional or not. Is it un-American, or do you think the law in the books in Arizona is a good one?
I think the law in Arizona is a good one. I definitely do not think it's un-American. I've taught in Arizona, the Bronx, and California, and I feel that this is so unfair to middle class like myself who are working 1, 2, 3 jobs to keep afloat when everyone, whether it's Congress or the Senate or the Republicans or the Democrats, or somebody needs to step up and stop trying to appease certain groups and just enforce the law.
Kit, thank you for your phone call. But here's my point. I understand if philosophically somebody says, you know what, I don't agree with the wink and a nod. If somebody's here illegally, deport them. I may philosophically disagree with it from a practical level, but the idea that these folks are stealing these middle-class jobs, I mean, I got the numbers if you want me to break them all down here, that the state of Arizona would actually make more money if they actually legalized the folks coming in here. Talk about taxable income, et cetera here. They'd actually have more money. But the idea, we saw this where? In Andrew, we went through this from Washington State here.
Washington State, they don't have enough people to pick the cherries. Alabama, they banned illegal immigrants from the field, and they had fruit rot and vegetables rotting on the vine. There was talk about letting state prisoners work the fields because they couldn't find workers.
My only point, Mike, is on a principle level, we can have a good debate. But the idea that these immigrants are stealing American jobs, come on.
You didn't hear me say that.
No, I didn't, but that's the idea.
Said it.
No.
The caller said that. Look, for years in this nation, we have had visitors come in with work visas, which has handled, worked on farms, worked on vineyards, etc. We're not opposed to that.
Yeah.
No one's opposed. And the conservative Republicans aren't opposed to that at all.
Okay.
What the issue is, legal or illegal. Someone who comes in and does it illegally.
But remember,
do we have a standard of laws here or don't?
I find myself defending George W. Bush, but when he was president, he tried to have reform that had a pathway, which said you keep your nose clean, you learn the language, you go through a probationary period, you hold a job here, you get either a degree, you serve in the military, you can become a citizen. The thing died. And for me, would you guys have had a problem with what he tried? I mean, in effect, he was giving amnesty to people here illegal. Would that have been too much of a hurdle for you?
Ultimately, what has to be done, you have to shut the borders down to make sure the borders aren't porous and people aren't still pouring through. Once you do that, and once you enforce the laws of the land, those who are here illegally will go back to wherever they came from, Then you can start dealing with the families that are here for 25 years or more, and you start looking at it on a case-by-case basis. But you can't.
So how long?
We're not talking about.
Is here enough?
Nobody. I don't know that, and I'm not going to decide that on this show. But no one's talking about picking up 11 million people.
Yes, they are.
And no, they're not. No, Richard,
Mike, you're not.
That's your soundbite. We're back to the sky is falling.
But the guys, that's what they say. They want them out. No amnesty. Go out of the country. Then maybe we'll let you back in. That's not your position.
When are you going to close the borders down, Richard?
Tuesday. When are you going to let people stay?
Well, why hasn't it been done? Why hasn't your president closed the borders down?
Why didn't your president do it?
No,
Just one point on the
Who's
fight.
the president
Do you guys
of the
remember
United
the debate when they jumped Santorum, if I remember right? He jumped Governor Perry and said, hey, this guy's given tuition breaks. And he turned around and said, hey, if you think some kid who got brought here by her parents, you don't want me to educate him in the schools, then call me guilty for having a heart. And he got some heat for that. And to me, if we can't even agree on and not calling them anchor babies, I mean, then we got a problem.
I have no problem with what Governor Perry did, but he also closed down his own borders. He used his own military and his own state troopers to close down his borders.
Quick question on that. Isn't that a federal responsibility, not a state responsibility? Whether Washington, you think, has abdicated it or not, every time I hear a conservative talk about the 10th Amendment and states' rights, it goes the other way, too. There are some rights that are exclusively for the federal government. This is one of them.
You are absolutely right, but when you have an incompetent president that refuses to enforce the laws of the land,
So you can chuck the Constitution for that.